Hello, my name is Alistair Hamill. I'm a teacher from Lurgan College, and in my school I am not only head of the geography department, but I'm senior leader in charge of teaching and learning, and also I'm learning lead for the area learning community that I teach in as well. So that means that I get to spend a lot of my time both thinking about pedagogy and putting it into practice, and it's a real privilege for me to be able to join with you in this conversation here today. The title of this conference could not be better, in my view, Teacher Education in the COVID Moment, because I think that we have a moment now. We have a time-sensitive opportunity that is presenting itself because of what's going on at this time. And I wanted to take my introduction just to outline a little bit of my experiences in the classroom and some of the other things that I've been doing in the last 6 months that really illustrate that. And I think the moment that is being presented to us is kind of like this saying that the rising tide lifting all boats. We've just been through and are continuing to go through the fastest and most extensive upskilling of teachers, not just in the island of Ireland, but all across the world in ICT competence. And I do think that there is an opportunity for us whenever we finish this whole experience to have the tide raised up for a real upskilling across the board for many, many teachers. And yet, that's far too gentle a metaphor for the actual experience of what it felt like. It came in so much more like a tsunami. It came in with this great surprise and devastation, and it rocked us. And it was difficult for teachers. Teachers like to be those that are in control, that at least pretend that we know what we're doing. And we have to pretend and try to be in control of so many variables within the classroom. We are the ones that like to pretend that we are the experts, and yet we hadn't a clue. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't really know what was going to happen next. And for many of us, what happened was like a perceived loss of expertise. Expertise is to a large degree context dependent. Take somebody who's quite expert at something, put them into a different context, and all of a sudden they can lose a lot of those connections. A lot of those things that feel like natural things can become a lot more clunky, a lot more difficult. In other words, the automaticity is lost. And that's certainly been my experience both as with distance learning and this blended model at the moment with socially distanced classrooms. The things that I automatically would reach out to use and to do, I can't quite do in the way that I would typically do them. Everything has to be rethought. And that led then to this perceived need, because we were crying out, how are we going to do this? And you got tweets like this all over the place, people just asking and crying out, this is a shock to us, we're not ready for this. What are we going to do? And that's where I think there is this moment that we can seize here, the timeliness for this. Because I think what happened was that you had a whole bunch of teachers, the teaching profession, looking up and looking out for support and for help, looking up to the system. And I know a lot went on with this in the system. I was involved in some of it. But it was slow, and the timeliness of the need led to this emergence, this spontaneous bubbling up from within the teaching profession of teachers who just seemed to be doing things that maybe were a little bit more interesting, a little bit more innovative, perhaps were just a little bit further down the road. And what happened was all of these connections were made between these individuals and these grassroots groups that sprang up. And from the system, it certainly was my experience that also we had this spontaneous connections being made with people that came down from the system. This felt like a much more personal connection, people connecting with people. And through those connections, what we managed to do was what might have seemed to be the impossible. We came up with incredible ideas about how we would try to meet this challenge. And of course, back in schools now, a second tsunami wave is hit when we're moving to this blended learning model and all the challenges that it presents. So that's why I think this conference is so timely, because I think there is this moment for us to seize. And I look forward very much to exploring that as part of the panel today. And there are just two very quick points that I would make at this stage. This opportunity that presents to us, I think, first of all, we've got to connect the dots. We've got to be finding creative and innovative ways of finding what these practitioners are doing all across the system. They're coming up with innovative and interesting ideas and connect them together, create the synergy, look for opportunities for next practice. And secondly, the system, in my view, is very fragmented, all these different elements that are maybe not as connected together as they might be, is to make the divisions between the segmented elements of our system as porous as possible. So whether it's the initial teacher education, whether it's the education authority, whether it's groups of grassroots teachers, whether it's classroom practitioners, just to make all of those connections as porous as possible so that we can be sharing as widely as possible, and to see this education process that teachers go through to be one that is genuinely career long. So thanks very much again for the opportunity to be part of this. I am thrilled to be here, and I very much look forward to carrying on with the conversations today.